Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. So I will begin the episode today with something of an update. I have mentioned several times in the previous few weeks about the book that I'm working on and also the corresponding fundraiser that will accompany the book. And the fundraiser is sort of a way to basically, make money from the book by being able to then give away the book. The fundraiser will launch on Monday, so stay tuned for the links for the fundraiser as well as more information. I'll get into more detail on Monday about that when it launches, and I'll be putting together like a promotional pitch video, but it's not really going to be a video. Like, it's going to be on YouTube, but it's not going to be like, here's Darryl's face talking to you. So there's probably going to be like some still image of the cover of the book, and I'll talk about some of the distribution options that are available and the various ways that if the goal is met, that the book will be available for free. And then if the goal is not met, ways that you can still get the book for very cheap. Portions of the book might be free if half of the goal is met, and there's going to be a lot more that is available for free if 5 times the goal is met. And I realize that, that's a lot, but there are things that I'll be giving away to donors that give at certain levels that if 5 times the goal is met, and I'll give you that figure on Monday, so make sure you tune in on Monday. But if 5 times the goal is met, then certain perks that only donors are going to receive, then everyone receives, and then the donors wind up getting another perk. So, I'll make T-shirts for the donors instead of giving, or rather in addition to giving the bonus audio content that will then be made public, I'll give the people that donate at certain levels T-shirts in addition to getting the audio content that then everybody is getting. So it's not one of these things to where you donate and then you get nothing other than the book becomes available for free. Like, you're going to get things of value, and other people can get things of value because you have donated. So it's all going to make sense when you see the fundraiser and you hear the actual pitch. And again, I'll get into more details on that on Monday. But the reason I'm mentioning it today is because I got word from my editor yesterday while I was in the statehouse that the editing has been done. So I'm going to, after I get done recording and uploading this show, I'm going to speak with the editor, and then I'll do like the final edits over the weekend. I'll get the pitch video made, and then I'm going to start recording the audiobook. And the audiobook, and one thing that I really love about doing audiobooks is it allows me to proofread in a different manner than if I'm just sitting there reading a book. Because when you do an audiobook, you're having to read the entire thing, and if commas are out of place, it's going to throw off the cadence, and it's going to throw off the rhythm, and it just doesn't wind up sounding right. And then there are times when, as you're reading something that is written, it might sound okay to have verbs before pronouns and nouns before other things, but when you're reading it as a script, like you're reading the lines, it doesn't really roll off the tongue the right way. So that's another reason that I like doing the audio, like the spoken, is because then I get to read it and then tell myself, hey, this looks okay in writing, but it doesn't sound right when hearing it. So that's just another part of my proofreading method, if you will. And the audiobook is part of what's going to wind up hopefully being given away if certain thresholds of donations are met. But I had mentioned about being at the State House yesterday, and I was actually at the State House for over 12 hours. It was near 13 hours that I was at the New Hampshire State House yesterday, keeping an eye on the state Senate. And the reason the Senate needed people to keep an eye on them is because there were two really important bills. Well, there were several that were important, but there were two that the House sponsor of the bill had asked. Well, one of the bills was a bill that they had sponsored. The other bill was a bill that I think they were a co-sponsor of, but it was still an important bill. And it was one that we weren't sure if the Senate was going to wind up doing a roll call on. So we wanted people that were there so they could watch the senators to see how they voted during the voice vote. And the one bill was a Good Samaritan bill, a 911 immunity bill, to where if people are at a party and someone overdoses, then the person who overdosed and anyone who made an effort to seek help would not be prosecuted for possession of whatever substance while the police and paramedics are responding. Now, there are exemptions to where, like, if you've got 20 pounds of some substance in your living room, then they can bust you for like some, possession with intent to distribute. But if it's just, a small amount or there's a pipe on the table, then you're not going to wind up getting busted for possession of a small amount of a substance. So it's a way to where people can actually wind up getting the help that they need. And there have been numerous stories about people that have overdosed, and it's reported in the news that the person was alone when they overdosed. Well, no, they weren't alone when they overdosed. They were alone when the body got found because all of their friends abandoned them because they were afraid that they were going to wind up getting arrested because they were there with somebody that overdosed and somebody had some substance on them. So this bill, the Good Samaritan 911 immunity bill, is going to hopefully wind up saving lives. That's definitely the intent. The legislation is based on laws that have been passed in about 27 other states, I believe. And what you've seen in those other states is the number of people that die from overdoses has actually decreased because people are able to get the help that they need. The other bill was a cannabis decrim bill. And it was by no means the perfect bill, or even what I would consider to be a really good bill, but it was a start. And that bill was amended down to be pretty much meaningless, but then it fell. I've actually got a YouTube video where I interviewed the head of the Marijuana Policy Project. I'll post the link to that in the show notes. You can watch that. We'll be back in just a moment.
The Doublespeak Dictionary by Leslie Starr O'Hara satirizes the marked difference between the ideal of we the people and the reality of we the elite, while offering an insightful glimpse into the clockworks of the totalitarian mind. Ever irreverent but never irrelevant, the Doublespeak Dictionary serves as a subversive and humorous but timely reminder that the emperor has no clothes. The Doublespeak Dictionary is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. ExpressCoin is the best choice for buying Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin, and more. ExpressCoin prides themselves on their customer service, so much so that the back end on the website should allow them to be even more focused on your needs. Get your cryptocurrencies with money order, check, wire transfer, or cash deposit. Get started at expresscoin.fppradio.com. That's expresscoin.fppradio.com.
It is the year 91,001 BCE. Witness humanity's origins in Hyperchronius, a classic role-playing game for Windows PCs with a story like no other game before. A liberty-oriented experience that is not to be missed. Go to zog.ninja to get your copy of Hyperchronius today. Use the code FPP to get $1 off. Hyperchronius, zog.ninja, code FPP.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. Also want to remind you about the upcoming PorcFest event. That is the Porcupine Freedom Festival, taking place June 21st through the 28th in the White Mountains of New Hampshire at Rogers Campground in Lancaster. And if you're planning on attending and you like to eat food, because really, like, who doesn't like to eat food? Everybody I know likes to eat food. Now, there's an event. There's actually two events where you can pay money to eat a bunch of food and a bunch of really good food. One of them I'm helping co-host. The one that I'm helping co-host is called Brunch Fest, where people will make meals that aren't necessarily entrees. So last year there was somebody that made margaritas or daiquiris, I forget which one, but they had like a mixed drink. There was non-alcoholic version for people that don't drink alcohol. There was somebody else that they made something with like a soy chorizo. I forget exactly what that was, but it was amazing. There were people that made some desserts and various other things. So that event, tickets are still available. I'll post the link in the show notes where you can buy the tickets from porcfest.com/register. And I'll also post the link to the event page on Facebook where you can find out more about Brunch Fest, what is in it for you if you participate as a cook. You could win some silver, and there are going to be other prizes in addition to silver that you can win, because really, who doesn't like silver? And I think there's also going to be small amounts of Bitcoin available. And when I say small amounts, I'm talking literally small amounts of Bitcoin, like, you know, $1 or $2 worth of Bitcoin on paper wallets that will be given to everybody that participates. Like, there's going to be prizes for everybody, but it's not one of these, like, you know, everybody gets a trophy sort of thing. There's going to be a first prize. There's going to be a second prize. There's going to be a third prize. We're probably going to have a Chef's Choice prize. I've not talked this over with the other co-hosts of the event, but I'm thinking out loud here. I think Chef's Choice should be a prize, because that's a prize during the one-pot cook-off. And I'm actually going to be cooking during the one-pot cook-off, so buy your tickets to judge my very tasty scallops. They are oh so yummy. It's a coconut lemon pepper scallop thing that I'm making, and you will absolutely love it. So you can find out more about PorcFest. PorcFest, that's PorcFest.com. And I hope to see you there. I'll be selling books. I'll be vending. So, you know, if you're there, stop by, see me. I'm also going to be doing this show Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from the media room in PorcFest, at PorcFest in Rogers Campground. And those are going to be really fun episodes, because I'm going to have some guests. I've not had guests on since the format change from being live every Sunday to recording 3 times a week. So I'm going to have some guests. I'm going to have rapid fire Ask Me Anything, where normally I do the Ask Me Anything every Wednesday, and I'll research and spend time getting answers to questions. Well, this is going to be Darryl is on the spot. I'm going to give myself one segment, so 9 minutes, and I'm going to try answering as many questions as possible. I'm hoping to get at least 9 questions in on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, each one of the special rapid-fire Ask Me Anythings. So hope you come out to PorcFest. Hope I get to see you. And if not, well, next year. There's always next year, right? Well, something that you don't always have is love. And I realize that's really a horrible segue, but there's a story that I want to cover, and it's actually somewhat old. The story's actually from 2011, but the information in the story is still relevant. Like, this is not one of these, like last week in Heathrow Airport, blah, blah, blah. No, this is talking about heartbreak and the science behind heartbreak. And I'm sure you've heard the saying since you were a little child, "Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me." Well, actually, science has shown that that's not the case. The story here from CNN from 2011, they write, "Science has finally confirmed what everyone who's ever been in love already knows. Heartbreak really does hurt." In a new study using functional magnetic resonance imaging, that's an fMRI, F for functional, not F as in fudge. In a study using an fMRI, researchers have found that the same brain networks that are activated when you are burned by hot coffee also light up when you're thinking about a lover who has spurned you. In other words, the brain does not appear to firmly distinguish between physical pain and intense emotional pain. Heartache and painful breakups are more than just metaphors, says Dr. Ethan Cross, the lead researcher and an assistant professor of psychology at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. The study, which was published in the journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Science, illuminates the role that feelings of rejection and other emotional trauma can play in the development of the chronic pain disorders such as fibromyalgia. Cross added, "It raises interesting questions about whether treating physical pain can help to relieve emotional pain and vice versa," saying, quote, "What's exciting about these findings is that they outline the direct way in which emotional experiences can be linked to the body." Cross and his colleagues recruited 21 women and 19 men who had no history of chronic pain or mental illness, but who had all been dumped by a romantic partner within the previous 6 months. The volunteers underwent fMRI scans, which measure brain activity by tracking changes in blood flow during 2 painful tasks. Now, the fMRI will track the change in blood flow regardless of the painful task, but they used the fMRIs while the people were undergoing 2 painful tasks. And just, by the way, this is one of those sentences that I would edit as I was reading or after reading, because the way it is written, it looks fine written because there's the dashes between where it talks about the scans and what the fMRI does with the rest of the sentence, but when you're reading it, it just sounds kind of weird and requires some explanation. So this is another reason why the audiobook is going to serve, or at least recording the audiobook of A Rebel's Journey, My Path to Liberty, is going to help me edit the book, because it allows me to find weird things like that. We'll be back in just a moment. Stay tuned to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
Coinbase is a simple and secure online Bitcoin wallet for sending, receiving, and storing Bitcoin. Coinbase also allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin using a bank account or use their tools to accept Bitcoin as a merchant. Opening a wallet is quick and easy, and for merchants, there are no transaction fees on the first $1 million worth of transactions. Get started at coinbase.fppradio.com. When her plush and comfy life suddenly and unexpectedly fell apart, Brooke and her dog Cloud set out to defy the odds. If this is a man's world, as they say, living on the streets is no place for a young woman. One day she awoke in the redwood forest and realized she had become a hobo, and would ultimately come to know exactly what it means to survive. How to Be a Hobo by Brooke Willett is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. FPP Radio News is brought to you by Duopoly, How the Republicrats Control the Electoral Process. Duopoly by Darryl W. Perry presents the history of the electoral system in the United States and explores the very real barriers faced by potential independent and third-party political candidates. The book has been called a must-read for every political science student, every member of Congress, and every state legislator in the country. Duopoly is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. So the story here from CNN, I will continue in just a moment. But first, if you have not tried liberty.me yet, I definitely encourage you to do so. It's a social network unlike any other social network, and I know that every social network says that, right? So, like, Twitter is like, we're totally different than Facebook, and in a lot of ways they are. And there are other social networks. There's Google Plus that, we're totally different, except that they really weren't any different than anything else. But what makes Liberty.me different than any other social network is the fact that they have integrated all into one site the best aspects of running a WordPress blog, the best aspects of social networks like Facebook, the best aspects of bulletin boards. Do you remember bulletin boards? They're more commonly now called forums. So there's forums, there's the social networking, there's publishing sites. Basically, it's a WordPress site, but they're there, they're integrated. There's also free ebooks that you can download. There are free Liberty guides that you can download, and there's a slight difference between the Liberty guide and the ebook in that the Liberty guides were not necessarily ever print books or designed to be, and they don't have like the ISBN number, which is something that books now have to have. Thank you, government treaties, for mandating that BS. But that is a rant for a completely different day. But Liberty.me, there's a lot of stuff there, and one thing that you will not find at Liberty.me are trolls. You will not find internet trolls because internet trolls don't want to have to pay to be an internet troll. So, yes, that means that Liberty.me is a paid service. It's a service that you pay for, which means that you're not the customer. Where with Facebook, and I use Facebook, but I know that I'm the customer of Facebook, or I'm the product, rather. I'm not the customer, I'm the product. But with Liberty.me, you're not the product. Liberty.me is the product. And if you use code FPP Radio, then that will give you a discount on your membership to Liberty.me. So again, Liberty.me, use code FPP Radio. Back to the article here from CNN. In the first test, there were two painful tasks that were presented or asked of these 40 participants, 21 women, 19 men, who had no history of chronic pain or mental illness and who had all been dumped or had a partner break up with them in the previous 6 months. In the first task, a heat source was strapped to each subject's left arm, and it created physical pain akin to holding a cup of coffee without the sleeve. In the second task, the volunteers were asked to look at photos of their lost lovers and were prompted to remember specific experiences they had with the person. Other fMRI research has examined how social rejection manifests in the brain, but this study was the first to show that rejection can elicit a response in 2 brain areas associated with physical pain. The secondary somatosensory cortex and the dorsal posterior insula, those brain regions may have lit up in the study, but not others, because the rejection his volunteers experienced was unusually intense. Although Cross stresses that the study is very much a first step in understanding the connection between physical and emotional pain, the findings may help chronic pain patients grasp that emotions can affect their physical conditions. That from psychologist Judith Schiemann, who is a doctor and the director of the chronic pain rehab program at the Cleveland Clinic. Past traumas can make people more sensitive to pain and thus more susceptible to disorders like fibromyalgia, which cause chronic pain and fatigue. She says her and her staff encouraged pain patients to explore their emotional trauma and baggage, but many are reluctant to do so. She says, as a clinician, I like studies like this because patients often don't understand why they have to do painful emotional work. She said, showing them something like this helps them understand that there is science behind what I'm asking them to do. Now, I'm looking at this from a completely different standpoint. And I'm looking at this from the standpoint of don't cause harm to other people. And that's one of the tenets of libertarianism, right? Is that you have the right to do what you want as long as you do not cause unjust harm to another person. And, well, this study is showing that mental harm, emotional pain, affects the brain in the same way that physical pain affects the brain. So that there are some people that I will call them advocates for bullies' rights, that will say, well, you can say whatever you want as long as you don't actually punch the person or touch them, then you're not committing an act of aggression. But, well, this study says otherwise. This study says that the brain makes no distinction between someone telling you you're fat, you're ugly, nobody will ever love you, and someone punching you in the face. Your brain will turn those words and that feeling of getting punched into the same sort of response. It processes them the same way. So this is where there's that divide on what the non-aggression principle actually means. And the non-aggression principle is basically the name for what I just said of you have the right to do as you want as long as you do not cause unjust harm to another person. So based on this study, I would say that no, like, words can hurt. Words do hurt. It's what people who have been victims of bullies have known their entire lives, that no, words do hurt. Words do affect me. So, yeah, it might not break your arm, but it's going to affect your brain the same way as if your arm was broken. And there's a saying, I believe it was from Gandhi, it might have been from someone else, where they said, before you say anything, then you need to ask yourself a series of questions. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? just because something is true doesn't mean that you necessarily should say it, because it could be something that is going to cause harm to the recipient. This has been Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online, fppradio.com.